Okay.
Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. I'm your host, Josie Way, and tonight co-hosting with me is Sherry Kachanis and Ken Demers. And I'm very pleased to announce that our guest is Laura Joseph. Now, on her business card, there's no room. She has so many qualities and characteristics. She is a spiritual medium. She is a healer. She is an artiste that she doesn't discuss too much. we've been talking about the condition of life. She is a medical intuitive, and the more we talk, the more, she has a medical background. The more we talk, the more we find out she does. So, how did you get started on the spiritual path with mediumship and healing with the Reiki? It's you and Reiki.
I've always had the gift. I actually went 10 years at Catholic school, and I guess in second grade I almost got expelled because I said I wanted to do a prayer for my grandfather because he had passed away. I didn't realize at the time it was a premonition of his passing, and so I spent a lot of my youth trying to run away from it, especially in my high school years. I grew up in a very spiritually inclined environment, if you want to say, and with a lot of apparitions. And so I spent a lot of my time in my youth really running away. And then it was probably after my divorce, maybe 10, 12 years ago, probably was when I started reigniting or realizing that if I had only listened to what Spirit was showing me on the day of my wedding, if I had listened to Spirit all along, things may be a little different, but then you get some difficult lessons. So I made a promise to myself I would never turn my back again. And as far as the Reiki, I'm trained in both Usui Reiki and Jikiden Reiki. And Usui more the Western, it's the Western influenced version of Reiki, and Jikiden is the non-Western, the original form of Reiki, which incorporates a lot of different elements that is not seen in Western Reiki. And as a victim or survivor of domestic violence, I went towards modalities like that to help heal some of those cords. So as partnering, I didn't quite trust the system. I lost trust in people, but I started regaining and trusting in Spirit. So partnering with Spirit and partnering and realizing that the healing, and especially healing trauma, really was being accomplished more through alternative means versus traditional means.
Yeah, and I know you facilitate various forms of healing for trauma, and you teach it and you lecture on it.
I do. I recently just spoke this past April at the Celebration of Reiki conference based out of Boston as part of one of their panelists on Reiki Reaches Out on the use of Reiki on healing trauma in domestic abuse situations, child abuse, sex abuse. Yeah, and
without revealing anything about anyone particular, what kind of progress have you seen with some of the people that you've worked with?
What I find very interesting is that I will have individuals, especially with sex abuse, it's watching the triggers from a practitioner and understanding and respecting the boundaries while you're working with them. But when you can see that they can finally let go and allow the healing, especially when it comes to legal matters, I've had quite a few that have put themselves in a panic and a frenzy because if they testify, it's up to them if so-and-so goes to jail or not, and having them recognize that the court isn't your friend, the DA isn't your friend, they don't represent you, this is a crime against the state, and all you're doing is telling your story. I have one client that had repeated abuse, both in childhood and partners, and she didn't want to go testify because she was afraid that if she was basically putting on herself that if they went to jail or not, it was her fault. So by taking that away and recognizing that all you're doing is telling your story from a mindfulness base, teaching them breathing techniques, meditation, and helping them understand that, all you're doing is telling your story. If they go to jail, great. If they don't go to jail, great. It's taking that power or that responsibility off of them and just having them recognize that they're just telling the story.
Now, how do those people get in touch with you? Through the DAs?
No, actually, a lot of it's through word of mouth. I don't do intervention work. There's a lot of shelters and domestic violence organizations that do that work.
Okay, so it's through the helping agencies.
I mean, most of the people that come to me are usually have been removed from a domestic violence situation in general for at least, what I'm finding, a minimum of 7 years. Because they've gone through the gamut. A lot of victims of abuse, if they're in it or just leaving, they're still in a hypervigilant phase. So they're more seeking, quick, help me. And to do the kind of programs that I'm offering takes a longer stance, and having them understand that the healing comes from within. And a lot of them aren't ready for that sometimes. And everybody has different levels and different are ready at different levels. I have people that are ready 5 years out, sometimes 2 years out. I've had somebody that was in their late 70s finally willing for the first time to start working and healing child sex abuse cords from their childhood for the first time in their life. So it's recognizing that and realizing that, you get to a point with traditional medicine, it's when you get to the point that they get you to a certain level, but they're still Band-Aids.
Yeah, they're not addressing the core issue.
It's healing the core. It's healing, and having the right practitioner that understands. Sometimes they may say they're ready for healing, but sometimes it's taking the hands off and recognizing they're really not. Because I say it's like pulling down the Hoover Dam. Unless they're ready for that initial flood, sometimes it can trigger a panic. I had a student once that said to me it felt like somebody put voodoo on them. And I was kind of upset, but at the same time it helped me recognize the Reiki or whatever energy modality they were having worked. It was that practitioner that couldn't properly convey what they might or might not be experiencing, or recognizing they may not really be ready for that healing. So it's having that initial contact with those individuals and having them understand that the healing comes from within. And when you have the healing, things are going to come to the surface. And they have to be at a certain place that they're ready to deal with them. Sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
When it comes to the surface, I say give it a good boot and just kick it out with a lot of, just muster that energy, just kick it out. And sometimes as trauma survivors, we bring it to the surface and we want to just suck it right back in out of fear, not realize it's exactly what we're doing. So in a sense, re-traumatizing ourselves.
What effect, let's assume we're dealing with a lady, 30, 40 years old, whatever, and she's had abuses of verbal, physical, whatever. When you work with them, what effect does it have on their lives?
I can give you a story. Once when I started doing this work and realizing the effects, at the time I didn't know what kind of effect it would have. There was a woman who was disabled, and because of housing situation, she couldn't necessarily easily flee. And what I kind of did was, if you want to call it law of attraction based mantras, energy healing, teaching them how to shield, especially with verbal abuse, teaching them mindfulness based. So I worked with her and I said, you can't leave, but when you go in and he starts in on you again, just visualize, this big bubble just kind of coming over, start taking some deep breaths, and it might kind of feel like you're not even hearing what he's saying, and just realize that here's this fly coming at you and it's trying to penetrate that bubble, but it doesn't get in. So when I did some of these mindfulness-based, through meditation and more coaching, she came back to me with one incident and she said, I did what you said, and just for the first time it didn't get inside.
But how did that affect her?
It gave her a sense where for the first time she started reclaiming her own power.
Okay.
It started helping with self-esteem. I did a package once with a woman a healing package, and she couldn't even walk to my office, and she says, I don't know what I did to deserve this. And I said, that's exactly why I'm doing it. And it was not so much for looking for recognition, but it was helping them to recognize that they are worthy, they are deserving, and helping them rebuild their self-confidence that's been stripped away from them.
All right, here's a question. Earlier, before we got started, we were chatting, and the subject of soul path, I think that's what you termed it. We've never had anybody on the show talk about soul work.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer that we come in to these lifetimes with a certain path we're supposed to follow, but we can get off that path. Is that the kind of trauma that you're talking about? Would that be something that somebody would choose ahead of time to experience? And then
this is the difficult lessons. You know, and there's multiple religions that acknowledge that, you know, one of the things I teach in Reiki is that, for instance, Shintoism, I believe there's like, I think 700 lives or something that you come here to live before you ascend. And in Buddhism, they say there's thousands of lives.
I've had many thousands.
Right. So, you know, and until you learn those lessons that, and in other religions kind of validate the same thing, we come here to learn a lesson. We choose our family, we choose our experiences. To kind of give you an example, there's somebody I've been working with. When I first met them, had probably one of the worst child abuse cases I had ever heard. But the work they've done on the healing end, I actually brought me to tears on how remarkable, because not too many people, I believe, would have survived it.
Did you see the paper yesterday?
No.
The Providence Journal? Where they got this weekend they had 2 or 3 cases of rape in India. 2-year-old girls, 4-year-old girls.
And there's a reason why they're targeting that age group, because the children don't remember, and since they're limiting statute of limitations, they're going after babies so they can get away with it. There is no memory.
Yeah, but
legally.
It just boggles my mind.
It's a case. It actually stemmed. The article I read a couple years ago stemmed from a guy, I think in Wellesley or somebody, Massachusetts, where it was tied for child pornography, but one of the investigators saw a particular teddy bear, and it linked, after all the investigation with even European, led to a gentleman in the Netherlands who was a caretaker as a babysitter, and he actually was molesting countless children under the age of 3. And what was happening was that they were targeting children specifically under the age of 3, so the chances of them getting prosecuted reduces. But to go back to the soul path.
And they can't testify, even if they remember something. If they're afraid of somebody, they can't, reasonably testify for themselves.
A lot of the women that I've worked with, that even if they do have a memory, they question, so they don't even want to come forward, especially because of the retaliation that's happening right now in the legal system. There's a lot of retaliatory tactics where, for instance, in the state of Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Supreme Court in 2014, I believe, knowingly ignoring state statutes, federal statutes on child abuse, knowingly gave a documented domestic abuser full custody. This is a Massachusetts Supreme Court case. So all that does is de-arm now the victim from wanting to leave the batter if they have an 80% chance of losing custody of their children. And now you have a Massachusetts Supreme Court case that is supporting that.
Anyway, let's go to a nicer subject.
But on the
I'm interested in soul paths. Why don't you talk about that for a minute?
So a soul path, and it's been fairly new for me. I call it a journey because of what I've been witnessing, both from the mediumship as the healer. I also have been seeing a lot of synchronicities. I feel like sometimes I may be delivering the same message to a different person, but it's the same message, and I'm going, okay, this is very odd. But it's really more universal. We all choose our experiences. To kind of go back to that gentleman, to give you an example, he, I believe, was not a very nice man, and he was in the Civil War, and he was part of the Confederacy. But on his deathbed, and this is the vision that I saw, he had a little black boy that came to him on his deathbed of maybe 9 or 10 that said, "I forgive you for killing my mother and father." and that changed him, but he couldn't change it in that life. So what he came in this life was to put himself in the most horrific possible experience so he can learn as his life lesson the art of forgiveness and forgiving people that are unforgivable.
Well, I'm a believer that we come into lifetimes for lessons and experiences, and that we will have in the different lifetimes. If he was a slave in one time, the next time he would be a slave owner. The next time he would be the person that brings the slave to the market, or the ex-slave, or the son of a slave. They would all orientate around one issue. They might have many thousands of issues in a lifetime, but they would have, of that one subject, they would have all different experiences of it.
Well, one of the things that I've been seeing this year is, I call it the year of awakening, because, and it's funny, when I wrote my initial blog in December, I didn't realize how much of it's really still, how because even as a writer, I mean, or as a medium, sometimes you wonder how accurate you are, because we're still human beings, right? Even though we still have to interpret the messages that we get. And that's where sometimes the miscommunication can
distortion
happen. And so one of the things that I've been seeing is how much of us maybe have been experiencing a lot of difficulties, whether it's through health, job, family, but we have been experiencing a lot of changes, and these changes sometimes can feel uncomfortable. And one of the things that I've been noticing, as I said to a colleague of mine, the material world isn't going to get you to where you need to be, and what if what lies on the other side is actually better than you imagined? And the soul is awakening us, and how many aren't sleeping at night? And I'd be curious to know how many of your viewers are saying they aren't sleeping, and especially waking between the hours of 2 and 4 a.m. And how many are saying they've got stomach issues, they've got relationship issues, they lost their job, they somehow lost their house, or maybe they've had something, and they keep fighting for the material things, and fighting for what they so-called worked for. And instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to partner with the universe. Maybe this isn't where I'm supposed to be. It's the resistance aspect. And we're all being called to follow our soulful path.
How do people find out what their soul path would be?
I actually, one of my clients I had been working with for about a year, and I said, you need to start following your soul. Start listening. Start having this partnership. Have this, just like you go out to lunch with your best friend or your mother or your father. Why aren't you going out to lunch or going out for a walk with your best friend, and that's your soul? And have that conversation.
But most people aren't going to know how, or have the capability of having that, I don't think, of having that conversation. They don't know where to start. How do you start?
I mean, everybody that I've come in contact are at different levels. Yep. So there are those that have been sort of maybe need a little guidance. So like, for instance, this one woman, I said, you need to do this, this, and this. And she's been out saying, I'm having a love affair with myself, but she's talking about her soul. But really, I find personally going out to nature, shutting off the electronics. Shutting off the electronics is huge, because it's a zapping to the energetic core. It's understanding that we are energy beings, and that the frequencies that we receive, the frequencies that we send out, we're very sensitive right now. So you got to be able to quiet that so you can listen and hear. There are too many people talking, but they're not taking the time to listen.
Some of the people in my life sleep with TVs on, or they have a radio on constantly, and I'm a firm believer in that. That's not a good thing for sleep patterning.
It's really not, because it's sending electronic waves to the body, and they may wonder why they're tired the next day. They may wonder why they're sore the next day. They may wonder why maybe they didn't get a good night's sleep. I'm a firm believer that you need to create a sanctuary, and it's tough, because if you don't quite get it, it's hard to get it no matter how you try to show somebody. That's what I'm finding. They have to be willing to go within. They have to be willing to understand that our bodies are designed to heal themselves.
Through meditation?
Meditation, mindfulness, it's a basic, we say prayer is asking. Meditation is listening. It's having a partnership. It's saying, look, this is where I am. I'm listening. Show me. Even if it's just give me a sign, just to show me a sign. And being aware, building a sense of awareness is really the most important part. If you're not building a sense of awareness, you put it out there, but you're not listening, you're not paying attention, you're not going to see the messages that are given to you.
And then the messages will become more and more intense until something happens and people have no choice but to listen. And then even then, we see people who do not listen.
Yeah.
Right.
That resistance that you're talking about, they resist the whole process instead of surrendering and going into the flow.
Well,
Right.
Usually there's some sort of illness. Frequently, autoimmune type of illness will show up, especially with the digestive system.
Yeah, I find, again, this is the seat of the soul. I always say your head and your heart will always steer you wrong, but your gut never will. So maybe what I say to people is if you're not sure, start asking questions. Start listening to the body. Your body tells you everything you need to know. So if nothing else, you don't know how to meditate. I don't have time for meditation. I can't hear. My mind kind of goes all over the place. Some people find just going out for a jog, going and sticking your feet in the ocean and just going, It's doing whatever it is for that particular person just to get them to a state of just calmness and repeating that calmness, and listening to the gut. And then eventually you're going to start going and go, aha, now I got it.
In this area, the Buddhist monastery up in Cumberland has 3 meditation classes. I believe it's Wednesday night and Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. So that would be someplace where they could go.
Absolutely. Mm. Absolutely. There's a new Buddhist, where the Jade Buddha came to a place in Abington, Massachusetts.
Okay, what's a Jade Buddha?
Jade Buddha was a 4,000-ton solid carved jade Buddha that traveled.
An actual Buddha?
Yes.
Oh, a jade.
Jade.
I thought you said Jade Buddha.
That traveled the world. The last stop on its tour was Abington, Massachusetts, and it now resides in Australia. And the energy from that, all you had to do was just go to the grounds and you just go, whoa. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter where you were in your developmental path. It comes down to, when I say to people, you know what, when you walk through a door or a new place, right here, you either feel good or you feel bad. Or you like it or you don't. And that's the little voice you need to tap into.
I had a similar experience. There's a Cambodian Buddhist monastery up in Smithfield, I guess, Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. And they've got a little room that's the size of a normal kitchen. And it's completely full of Buddhists. The biggest being like 7 or 8 feet, and then they go down on both sides, so you surround the whole room. I went walking into that room, and my heart just went, open. I mean, I've only experienced it twice, and that was the second time, so I knew what it was. Yeah. But it was an interesting experience.
It's incredible. Those that have been doing the work, or those that have been at least open to that spiritual path, regardless of religion. This is not a religious thing. I want to be clear on that, because it's a spiritual thing. And I always say there's a common thread in all religions. It's a matter of tapping into that one side. Mm-hmm. And it's listening to that inner voice. When you can start listening to that inner voice, and it comes from here. And I used to say to people when I do psychic medium events, and I'll say to people, I say, okay, so how many of you have had that motherly instinct, don't go here? How many of you did you just felt in your gut that this should be done a certain way, and you kick yourself for not listening to your gut? And I'll see all these hands raised in the air, and I said, well, that's the voice you need to tap into. We all have that ability. Some of us listen to it and some of us don't. Some of us want to have electronic devices. If you are constantly listening to your electronic devices, you're muffling the ability of listening to source energy.
Hmm.
That's right.
Becoming more sensitive is the key to it.
Yes.
Right. And those electronic devices, like you said, they interfere with our energy field, and especially you were talking about the TV. Think about the subliminal programming that's happening to someone who is actually sleeping but still getting programming from the TV.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm an electrician by trade, and I have little testers that I can hold in my hand, and I put them next to switches and plugs, and they go beep. That tells me it's got. When I turn one of them on and I'm sitting 10 feet away from my TV set, it goes beep, Or if I walk over to my microwave and I push that button, beep, and I back up away from it, and I'm like 7 or 8 feet before it stops beeping. So we're within that field.
So this is what I explain to people that may know nothing about Reiki, that may know nothing about acupuncture or any of those energy modalities. I say, this is what I used to say when I used to teach anatomy and physiology. We all have a brain, okay? That's your
Hopefully.
motherboard of your computer. We all have a spinal column. That's your power strip. Okay, there's a reason why there's plastic around your extension cords, right? As an electrician, can you explain to me why there's plastic around those extension
Keep
cords?
the potentials apart.
Okay. Well, we have what's called the myelin sheath that protects our spinal column for the same reason. Keeps the electrical conduction that comes out from the brain going in the same path. And then it branches out into the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, so forth and so forth. Okay? That's the energy, that's the vibration, it's the same thing. Just like that power strip, now that plugs into your TV. And I'm using analogies, your microwave, but instead that's your kidney, that's your intestines. Okay, so you got all these electricity happening. It's tapping into those subtle energies, understanding that everything comes from here. This is your motherboard. This is your computer. This is your power strip, and everything else is your extension cords that go to it.
And they are susceptible to stray currents.
Absolutely.
Excuse me, I have to say thank you for being with us tonight, and thank you to our audience, because we only have a few minutes left.
Okay.
And I don't want to forget to say that. Where do you practice out of?
I do a lot of travel, so I do speaking engagements all over New England, but my home base is in Hingham, Massachusetts.
Okay. And how can people get in touch with you?
My website is Healing with Spirit, and that's www.healingwithspirit.webs.com. That's probably the easiest way for people to reach me.
Okay.
What about us poor people that don't use that stuff and just want a telephone number?
Well, my cell phone number it's 339-832-2041.
Repeat it.
The cell phone number is 339-832-2041.
And as you can see, that she's unbelievably gifted with many, many talents. And I think Ken would like to finish up with with more about the soul path.
Yeah. How do we? I come to you and I say, "What's my path?"
I have a suggestion for people that don't know. There is such a thing as, and with the gut and the inner knowing, as working with pendulums and other things like that to tap into your inner knowing, to get a start if you don't know where to start.
I actually have a mixed opinion about that as an energy person, and it's not that I don't use pendulums, but as somebody that, if you're conducting, especially the stronger healer you are, I believe there's a certain level, especially if you're using it for yourself, we can alter the energy of the pendulum. So that's where I find some gray areas. Where to start really is to find, if you're not sure, is to find the right practitioner to help coach you and walk you through. Whether it's walking into a Buddhist temple, that with a Buddhist monk that can help you through mindfulness-based practices, or a Reiki practitioner that has that experience, regardless of whatever your background is, and to really, or various churches and things like that.
The spiritualist church is very helpful.
Yes.
And I want to wrap it up now and say thank you again for being with us. Come back and join us again on Psychic Holistic Spotlight. We will have Laura back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Here's a question.